Okay, today I'm doing my talk on the Ministerial Internship. The Ministerial Internship, and this has been very interesting to me for a number of reasons because I do a lot of things in leadership already. But let's kick off with Paul. He was a team leader in many different ways when it came to his missionary journeys and the strategy of team leadership according to Paul. First of all, conflict is inevitable. The idea that when two people or groups of people come together for a project, at some point there'll likely be conflict on some level, even if it's not necessarily a serious level. But obviously, in this case, it was serious enough for there to be sort of a split. But conflict resolution does not necessarily have to be a problem. Certainly doesn't have to become a break in relationship or maybe even a split per se, although there may have been a split of focus and mission here. But the important thing is that the mission was continuing. The mission did continue. So when there's conflict, and even maybe when there has to be a separation of fellowship for a period of time, there's no need to be throwing each other under the bus or trying to undermine someone else's ministry because they're doing something different than you. We see a lot of those things happening in today's day and age, but we didn't see that back then. So the mission continues because the kingdom is the priority. Then, of course, there is Larry Osborne and his topic on why some teams fail and some teams win. And most don't. The idea of guarding the gate. I thought that was interesting because having been in ministry over a number of years as a layperson and trying to do certain things in ministry, there was a number of times when it became clear that what I felt the Lord was doing with me and with ministry was not necessarily what the church wanted to wrap their arms around. And that was always a bit of a challenge for me to understand why we can't just move forward with certain things. But looking at it from the leadership's point of view, it is so much more difficult if we don't guard the gate, so much more difficult to get people out of the pen or off the bus, so to speak, than it is to bring them on. And the larger the ministry, the larger the church, the larger the mega church, the more they're going to tend to guard the gate because, again, moving in a different direction once something has already begun becomes much more difficult to do. So a couple of things I picked up from the reading and from the videos. And then getting into the interviews that I had with a number of pastoral folks on a couple of different points. A couple of those points was emotional intelligence and people pleasing. Emotional intelligence, people pleasing. It's been said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And while that's true, it can be very easy to slip into this idea of people pleasing, so much so that we're moving in a different direction away from where God has called us to be. And that's where we have to be mindful that it's much more important to please God rather than pleasing man. Please God rather than pleasing man, which can be difficult. The problem is if we get too far into the people pleasing side, we start to shift ministry and teaching and focus into a direction that we were never called to be in. And it might even feel good for a season because people are happy with us and popularity is up, so to speak. But as we see here, there is no grace for that space. There is no grace for that space of stepping out of God's will. And if we want grace for his space, we have to stay in what he has called us to do, even if that may step on some toes or ruffle some feathers. What about team building and organizational development? Team building, organizational development. First of all, there does need to be a clear written direction when it comes to team leadership. That's going to be critical for sure. Written direction and vision. Everything, it's been said, everything rises and falls on leadership. So if there's not clear direction, written expectations, there's going to be organizational challenges. And beware of, I fall into this, beware of favoring personal relationships over a certain skill set. If you need a certain skill set on your team, that's who you need to be bringing on the team, not necessarily someone that you connect with the most or you relate with the most, because that's not going to move the mission forward as effectively as it could if you were sort of staffing, so to speak, or at least building a team to your weaknesses as opposed to things that you connect with the most, for sure. And then a personal one for me as well is submitting to spiritual authority. fit your calling into the greater vision, fitting your calling into the greater vision. That can be a challenge. Why? Well, because you're called to do certain things, and sometimes you feel that the greater vision is stifling you or stopping you or getting in the way. And that can be creating, of course, feelings of frustration and irritation, etc., etc. But here's the thing, nothing wrong with having some conflict in private, right? So board meetings or one-on-one meetings, expressing how you feel that's different than the organization possibly, or what you want to do and they don't want to come alongside. But once you leave that meeting, you need to be the one waving the flag as high as possible for the organization and supporting and promoting and cheerleading what that ministry is doing, in essence being loyal to the ministry over your personal preferences. That is key. And then there's growth in the waiting. You might say, well, how long do I need to wait? I'm called to do certain things and I'm waiting. Well, there's growth in the waiting as well. And sometimes what God wants to do in us is more important than what he's trying to do through us in that ministry as well. Well, that's all I have. And thank you so much. God bless you.